Councillor Thompson and Councillor Donovan.
Could you please indicate your vote?
I'm voting in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson? Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Item number 2, our mayor's comments. I just want to point out a good news story. Always nice to have a good story when we've been dealing with difficult times and challenging weather. We had a call to one of our staff members the other day from a young woman who lost her iPhone while she was out sliding near the Qplex. There was no sign of the telephone or the iPhone, and the next day we received an email stating that someone had found this lost and then found phone. So staff were able to get the person who lost the phone and the person who found the phone so that the phone was returned, and everybody was happy. So it's always nice to know that our community is working together and that they care for one another. And certainly an item like an iPhone, nobody wants to lose that in snowy weather and times when we need to communicate. The other item, of course, is that yesterday, because of safety, an abundance for safety for their workers and for people and cars on the streets, Faro removed garbage collection yesterday afternoon, and that was going to resume again today. So in the event that that happens, I just want to remind everyone that you can register for reminders and notifications from the Fundy Regional Service Commission, which will keep you apprised of changes in service like the one we experienced yesterday. And you can register for this free online at www.fundyrecycles.com. So just bear that in mind, and if you've got a second or two to hook up to that, then you will get constant reminders. I know one of our counselors said that she has already signed up, and that notification came in automatically when the trucks were off the road. So just a little tip there. So moving on, I know you might have to draw this up on your computer. Deputy Mayor Schreier, would you please read the treaty acknowledgement? If you could bring that up. Just on your attachment.
Yes, I have it, Your Worship. We'd like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wildestok, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq people whose ancestors along the Passamaquoddy tribes who signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this moment to pay respects to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. And may we remind ourselves of the important work that we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias, and always in the best interest of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Schreier. I'm looking forward to disclosure of interests, please. I don't see any. We will move on to number 5, presentations. There are none. Item number 6, public hearings. As a virtual meeting, callers may phone in using the following number, 1-844-924-0630. Item A, public hearing, David McKenzie, Ascension Elevating Devices Limited, 355 Hampton Road. David McKenzie, application to amend Section 59 CPA agreement to permit addition of accessory buildings on behalf of and additional staff. So there is a letter of objection received from Liz Flogeris and her representative, Mr. Rod Gillis, solicitor, speaking on behalf of Ms. Flogeris. So,
Your Worship, Mr. McKenzie is in attendance, and he may wish first to speak to his proposal, and then perhaps Mr. Gillis can speak when after Mr. Mackenzie finishes his proposal.
Thank you, Mrs. Snow. Mr. Mackenzie, you have up to 10 minutes, please, to make your presentation.
Oh, thank you. First, I'd like to apologize for missing the TAC meeting last week. I had a bit of a family emergency. So anyhow, my apologies to the members of the PAC. Basically, my business has grown and, we need a little extra space for materials just to be dropped there until we get them out to the appropriate site. Part of this is COVID driven as well because the equipment doesn't come like it used to. It comes in dribs and drabs and we have to put it somewhere. Now, I have letters of support from both my neighbors on either side of the property who are happy and consider us a good neighbor. The addition in question is like 180 feet from the road and it's very difficult to see. And it's not visible at all from the complainant's house. If you walk out on the sidewalk in front of her house and you look at my property, you can't even see the building that she's complaining about. So I'm all due respect, I'm not sure why she has an issue with it. Yeah, I know she said it's a residential nature of the neighborhood, but it used to be the highway, and I provided documentation on the amount of properties that are residential and commercial in that stretch of road. And to me, it's a real stretch to suggest that anything on that main road is residential in nature. There's churches, there's ball fields, there's all manner of non-residential, non-single family homes all along that strip. And all I'm trying to do is just keep my people working and, live within my means. And, all I'm going to do is have a few more people in my office. And, once in a while, a truck comes and drives into my yard and unloads packages and equipment. And, respectfully, I would like to be able to continue to do business. I bought for that purpose. I'm happy to answer any questions. If anybody has any questions, I don't know that I have much more to say. I did provide some documentation, some notes, and that sort of thing. And I understand I will be in front of the Planning Advisory Committee next week. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mackenzie. I will go now to...
Oops, I'm sorry, Your Worship, for interrupting, but the process for the public hearing, the proponent states his proposal, then you open it up for anybody who wishes to speak for or against. And following that, the proponent will have an opportunity to address concerns that have been brought up.
Right. Is there anyone in the listening audience who would like to speak for or against this discussion?
Well, my name's Rod Gillis, and I wish to speak against it on behalf of the chairs.
Thank you, Mr. Gillis.
Wish me to commence?
Yes, go right ahead.
The proponent indicated that it's difficult to see the building from the road. Yesterday, I went on Google Maps, and I was sitting in the middle of the road. There was no snow, and I looked to the back of the proponent's property, and I could see two 40-foot containers, as well as an arch building between the two containers. And that's really the issue that's of concern here. One, the change in use of the property, more towards a light industrial type use, and the use of containers as accessory buildings, which is totally contrary to your zoning bylaw. If I take a look at page 20 of the materials before the council, on the first page, and it's the decision of the committee. This was the PAC, the middle part of last year. It reads that the PAC asks the town staff to write a letter to council asking that a fine be waged against the property owner for their disregard of the town's bylaws, the developer's agreement, and the authority of town staff. So I start with that, and then I move on to page 6 of your materials. And we have here the staff report to council, which outlines the provisions of the neighborhood commercial zone. It's halfway down. It neighborhood commercial the province, I gather. Having said that, my client's concern is that it's the shipping containers itself. The bylaws of the town don't specify what use can be made of a shipping container and how many shipping containers a resident can put on his property, whether they're on top of one another or beside one another. So I went through your zoning bylaw to try and get a better understanding of it. And what the proponent's asking for here requires you to amend your zoning bylaw, not only with respect to the use, but also with respect to the definition of accessory building and with respect to the intensity of the use. And for example, if you look at your zoning bylaw, and at page 41, it refers to accessory buildings and structures. Now, an accessory building or structure, no accessory building or structure can be used as a detached garage, and then it provides certain criteria that the area exceeds 63 square meters or have a horizontal dimension greater than 10 meters. The two sea containers, 40 feet long, 10 feet wide, are 400 square feet each. Total is 800 square feet just for the sea containers. And with that, the maximum area the building could occupy in between the two containers would be about 146 square feet, and it's much bigger than that. If you take a look at the section, that was subsection 2, subsection 1, subsection 2 talks of other accessory buildings. They may not exceed 23 square meters. And clearly any one of those sea containers in their own right exceed 23 square meters. Then subsection 3, accessory buildings and structures in total may not occupy more than 10% of the area of the lot or 86 square meters. So what that says in your bylaws is that no matter how you cut it, the maximum size of all accessory buildings, and that would be each sea container and in between building, cannot be more than 946 square feet. Now, you may try and argue or differentiate what's an accessory building, and you have to go back to your definitions in section pages 11 and 12. In page 11, it says building main means a building in which is conducted the main or principal use of the lot on which the building is located. And then if you go over to page 10, building accessory means a detached subordinate building not for human habitation located on the same lot as the main building or structure. So what you're faced with here, if you attempt to do a section 59 rezoning or just for this particular lot, you have to look at amending your bylaws with respect to accessory buildings. There's an application before the PAC to allow the building in question to be higher than is permitted by law. And with that in mind, you're opening a Pandora's box with respect to the use of sea containers. Now, I confess I don't live in the present time in Quispamsis, and I had lived there for a great many years. I've got a few sea containers myself on some of the properties that I own. They're well out of the way. Nobody sees them. The property's a few hundred acres, so there's no problem with the location of the containers. To put one containers on their property all the way along for whatever use they want, whether it's for accommodation or for storage, you're changing the real nature of neighborhood commercial. The best place for that type of activity, I would suggest, would be in the light industrial zone, L1, which is at page 62 to 65. And there, this type of activity, including the number of people working on this enterprise, would fit quite well, but they don't fit in a neighborhood residential type area. That would be all that I would have to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillis. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against? Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against?
Is that my response, speaking for or against, or do I get to respond to Mr. Gillis?
You have to wait until I finish asking to
Sure.
ensure that everyone has an opportunity to voice their opinion.
Okay, certainly. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against? Okay, Mr. McKenzie, I will give you an opportunity to respond.
My calculator's on my phone, so I couldn't check the math on the square footage, but he mentioned from the road you can see it. Well, that's true. What I said is from the neighbor who's complaining, you can't see it. And that's kind of my point. Like right beside her, she's got a baseball diamond, a great big parking lot, a hockey rink, and there's all kinds of big non-residential buildings there. This is 170 feet from the road. And when you drive by, literally, unless you turn your head 90 degrees, you don't see anything back there. And when you do, they're white, it's clean, it's new, it's policed, the yard is policed up, there's no junk left laying around. Yeah, I think I mentioned the last time, it is my intention, in the near future to relocate my business. However, right now is not the time. All I'm trying to do is deal with, the exigencies of running a business during COVID times. And many of us have had to change the way we do business because of the nature of the pandemic. And, if this was, my equipment comes completely different than when I got in there. And, the business is, the amount of people that are there are very few. They show up in the morning and they leave. And there's a few people working in an office. There's no work going on in those sea cans or in that auxiliary building. There's none. Right now, all that's in it are tools and parts. And, I really it's so far back from the road, and it's a street that's full of commercial type businesses. So I have to disagree with the fundamental nature of the neighborhood being residential. Just drive down there and, a third of the buildings are not residential. So anyhow, that's all I have to say. And I would like to check the math, have an opportunity to, I guess, since she's hired a lawyer, I guess, if I may find it necessary to hire a lawyer myself, because I'm just trying to run a business, and, I've been there for years, and both my neighbors on either side of me are happy. The neighbor who's complaining can't see, her view has zero change from when Byron had that place, because you can't see anything from even in the this time of the year with no leaves on the trees, it's virtually impossible from her property to see anything in the back of my property. So I'm not really sure what her problem is with it, but I guess that's all I have to say with all due respect.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKenzie. Is there anyone on council who wanted to speak to this? I believe there's a motion. Just looking. Part 2 of this.
Worship? Your worship, it's Deputy Mary Squire.
Yes, Deputy Shar.
Yes, I just wanted to speak to it. Are we asking questions? We can ask questions.
Yes.
Okay, so my question has to, for Mr. McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie, you noted that this is temporary. I believe you said that a few times, and I totally understand that COVID has changed the water on the beans for a lot of us, and I can appreciate that. But also I can appreciate working with the town to make sure that when you're moving forward with extensions or renos, anything like that, that you have the authorization of the town and have been working with them to make sure and not disregarding perhaps what they might want you to do
Yep.
to make sure everybody's happy. So my question is, if you were to relocate, when would that be? So would you consider a temporary usage until a date that you would be able to relocate your business? Not that we want to lose your business, but that size of the business, even if you can downsize the business on the current location and move part of it to another location. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's eminently reasonable. And, I'm currently under an NDA, with a prospective purchaser. And, the anticipation is that part of the purchase of the business is we'll be relocating it. Right. And part of the agreement, if it goes forward, is that I provide them 9 months free rent. So I can keep my staff at that place for up to 9 months. And I anticipate in that time frame they're going to either build, and I would obviously recommend Quispamsis because we started here, but and with regards to ignoring the town, I put one sea can in, it's been there for years, and then we got busier and we needed more tools storage, so I brought another one in. To me, they were just temporary. I didn't even, permits and town building. It's not even on my radar. I've never been involved in anything like this. And we looked at it. Initially, I got the roof to join the sea cans just to keep my trailers in it, to keep the snow off them so they wouldn't collapse from snow load. And then we got really busy. Our parts and materials shipping was changed significantly how it came. And so I decided, okay, I'll frame it up. I'll put nice color steel on that and I'll make it look really nice. And it wasn't until the framers were in there that I saw the town bylaw officer. They called me and they said, the bylaw officer's here. And I said, oh, it was actually on my birthday. And I said, oh, really? Did he tell you to stop working? And they said, no. I said, well, okay, well, finish it up. And when I get back in the office, I'll look at it. And we immediately reached out to the town at that point. And by then I'd already purchased the steel, and I screwed the steel on and closed it in and put a garage door on it so it didn't look terrible. And, if I had it to do again, yeah, for sure. I would have come to the town and applied for the permits. To me, it was like a sea can and a sea can. They could both be hauled out, and then it was a temporary roof. And I do apologize for that, but I really, it was, you know, I can just apologize for making a mistake, because it's not something I'm aware of, or that I know anything about. I've never, I mean, I'm just trying to run a small elevator company. And yeah, if you can give me a couple of years, I'll get it out of there. And as soon as it's gone, like I've got no problem taking that metal roof down, and because ideally I'm hoping to get that zone for multi-unit apartments down the road, and put a nice building in there. But right now I'm very busy, and I've got a bunch of staff coming and going, and we're just trying to keep our doors open and fulfill our contracts.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schreier. On item number 6A2, there is a motion there.
Councillor Bigger has his hand up, Your Worship.
Councillor Bigger.
Thanks so much. And I'll just mention that Councillor Miller also has his hand.
Okay,
So
I
I don't
can't
know
see
if,
from this vantage point, so if somebody could continue to remind me of that,
oh yes,
that would be
you're looking
helpful.
you're looking at the big screen probably, so it's a little harder to see there probably. I'll just put my hand down now that there we go. Well, I thank you very much, Your Worship, and thank you to Mr. McKenzie and also to Rod Gillis on behalf of the resident. And I just want to say that I also had the same question that the Deputy Mayor asked about kind of the temporary nature of this. In fact, as we were going through the presentations, I was going back through old council meeting notes to find, was the December 3rd meeting, I guess, where there was, and Mr. McKenzie was before us. And I was sure that I recalled, Mr. McKenzie, you having mentioned about this being something of a temporary fix, and I'm a bit perplexed on this. I'm hard pressed to know what is the right way forward. And I guess that's not really offering any solution at all, but I'm sort of torn between, on the one hand, having a sense that I don't particularly think that it represents an untenable imposition, like practically speaking, in the region where it exists. I tend to come down, if it's okay for me to say so, with what Mr. McKenzie's saying, insofar as QMA is across the street. There's an elementary school a stone's throw away. The giant King's Church complex is just up the road. So I see that side of it, and I have compassion for the fact that businesses, large and small, have been forced to adapt to try to endure and stay tenable or stay whole through the pandemic. At the same time, these structures, temporary though they may be, and however nicely they've been sort of dressed up to be more attractive in the community, to the community or whatever, and however sort of out of sight they are, to Mr. Gillis's point, they don't currently meet bylaw standards, and there's not much point in us having bylaws if we aren't going to enforce them. And it seems as though somehow, I don't know how this got to exist without, like in such contravention of the bylaws. And bylaws can be changed and adjusted, they evolve. And perhaps this should, in the larger scheme of things for this area. Hampton Road, in my estimation, is not much of a residential area these days, depending on where you're at on it, I suppose. But I am disappointed, I must admit, to learn that as I read through this, that, the complainant that Mr. Gillis represents laid out what seemed to be, concerns that there were multiple efforts along the way to try to speak to this as it was being developed. And yet here we are. It got built, it got developed, and I don't particularly think that this is a squatter's rights kind of issue where anyone's trying to say, ha ha, I'll build it and then try to get it out of there. But I also think that we have a commitment to enforce our bylaws. So I'm sorry to be kind of just plodding along and not really giving any direction one way or the other here, but personally, I'm very kind of vexed on this.
Can I respond to Councillor Bigger?
Yes, Mr. Gillis. Was it Mr. McKenzie? Sorry.
Yeah. I completely understand, Councillor. And as I say, it was August 19th when I first had a bylaw officer out there. Now, it's possible there was a correspondence came to my office that I didn't take note of or didn't catch or didn't hit my desk. Previous to that, I'm not sure, but August 19th was when I was first really aware. Oh, wow, I've done this. I've done this without permits, and we immediately approached the town at within a week or so of that, and said, okay, well, what do we need to do to make this right? And we've all along we've tried to do everything we can, and the only thing that I did after the bylaw officer came is the sheet metal that I bought to put on. I put that on myself. For one reason, sometimes I have $100,000 worth of elevator equipment in there, and the purpose of building it was to keep it dry. And the other reason was so it didn't look like a scab, right? And so I just, I did my best to mitigate that, Councillor. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just quickly add as well, excuse me, Your Worship, but I'll just also say that I do think there is some merit in as far as us plotting a way forward to deal with this, I do think there's something to be said for, maybe 2 years is too far of a horizon, I don't know, but I do think that there is something that preserves our bylaws if we are able to say that this is a temporary measure under the circumstances. And also, I also want to give credence to the letters of support from neighbors adjacent to the property, which I don't think that's nothing, so I just would want to underline that as well. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Miller, I believe, was next.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Mr. McKenzie and Mr. Gillis, for the information on both sides. I guess, sir, your Worship, to our Director of Engineering and actually to all of Council to a degree is I have to concur with Councillor Bigger. Is if we do have bylaws, we got to make sure they're enforced, but things do change and can change. So, Mr. Gillis, and again, I'd like to see what PAC says before we do a final recommendation on this, but I'd like to know what we're looking at. He brought up some great points as far as bylaws and what should or shouldn't be there. And we know things have changed since we've written our bylaws. So I think this is something we need to look at in the future and maybe tweak these, because I tried to write as much as I could, but I'm going to have to rewatch this later because of all the different pages that Mr. Gillis referred to and all the different amendments or changes that would have to happen. So I guess maybe through you, Your Worship, to our Director of Engineering, if he has any comments on those type of bylaws, and thank you.
Mr. Logier, were you going to respond to this?
Your Worship, sure. With regards to the zoning bylaw and accessory dwellings or accessory buildings, the planning staff is looking at the concept of accessory buildings on a regular basis. We do get various applications to the town for materials, sizes, heights, and things of that nature. Even though there are specific sizes identified in the bylaw, there is a variance process that is available to someone if they wanted to build a garage that did not meet exactly the square footage or the area required under the bylaw. The PAC grants variances on a regular basis for that. They do take into account, the nature of the change being requested, the type of change, things of that. We have received requests for CCANs in different locations in the towns in the past. And again, these are all reviewed on a case-by-case basis. as council is aware, in this particular situation, this came in after the fact. So essentially, we were sort of chasing an established construction, and the process required us to look at, is this a variance situation, or is it a zoning situation? And then the municipal planning officer brought forward the fact that there is an existing developers agreement for that site, and there are some terms and conditions that would have to be examined. So that's the reason it's come before council as a zoning item, as opposed to a straight out variance, because it's really dealing with a lot of use issues more so than the site itself. But as far as the accessory buildings concept and the potential for changes down the road, it is something that is looked at regularly, and we are looking at that for the changes with the bylaw. We're looking at different areas of the bylaw for things that have come before council in the past, or things that we've seen in the town over the last few years. So I'm not sure if Councillor Miller, if you've anything specific, or if that's general enough to answer your questions, Your Worship.
No, thank you, Mr. Loge. That basically answered it and gave me a few other answers on top of that. So I was kind of curious myself why it didn't go through PAC first and why we're talking about it now. But as you pointed out, this is more of a rezoning than a variance. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Thank you, Mr. Loge. And could somebody indicate, please, if there is another person wanting to speak?
Councillor Olson.
Councillor Olson, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Thank you to the presenters here this evening. As we've also been noted, PAC has requested a 30-day extension for their comments on this particular situation because of the fact, as Mr. McKenzie has mentioned, he missed the PAC meeting. So if it is in order, I would like to move that following this public hearing and in consideration of PAC's request for an extension to provide their written views as noted in their notice of its decision, Council grant PAC the request for an extension up to 30 from the date requested, which was January 12th. And further, Council postpone Ascension Elevating Devices Limited's application to amend their Section 59 CPA agreement pending receipt of PAC's recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question, please vote now.
Your Worship, was Deputy Mayor Schreier's hand up to speak for the vote?
Deputy Mayor
no.
Schreier.
No, I'm good, Your Worship.
Anyone else on the question? Thank you. I think if you use your hand rather than the icon, I would be able to see that if you wave a little bit. Thank you. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you to those who are visiting with us this evening. Item number 7, minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Miller, moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Unfinished business. Item 8A, 2022 applications for borrowing, staff reports from Town Treasurer. Item number 1, Transportation Services, 2022 Street Capital. Deputy Mayor Schreier.
Yes, Your Worship, I've put a motion forward for the 2022 capital, or that the municipality of Quispamsis submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow for capital expenses in the following terms and amounts. Transportation services, 2022 Capitol Street paving, $600,000, 15 years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schreier. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Schreier, seconded by, we just have to adjust our screens here again. Councillor Thompson. Moved by Deputy Mayor Schreier, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question. Thank you. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 2. Protective Services, Fire Station number 2 renovations. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that the municipality of Quispamsis submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow for capital expenses for the following items, terms and items, amounts, purpose, protective services, fire station number 2 renovations, $1,785,000 over a 20-year term.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Miller, seconded by Councillor Luck. Thank you. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 9A, concerns re consumer fireworks. We have with us this evening Chief Ireland. Welcome, Chief Ireland, with a memo from Chief Bill Ireland, and he is in attendance to respond to any inquiries. I don't know if there are any visitors online tonight. We certainly had some correspondence on this issue, so I can go directly to Chief Ireland. Chief, if you would like to speak to the concerns that have been brought. I guess most of those went to Councillor Luck, and they were forwarded on to the rest of council. So would you like to hear Councillor Luck speak to the issue, or would you like to speak to the research that you have and the data that you have collected? And that question goes out to Chief Ireland.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think what I tried to express in my memo was that this issue has been before council on 2 previous occasions. And from a fire service perspective, nothing has really changed with regards to consumer fireworks. I understand and appreciate that there was a incident around Christmas time this year involving one of the residential neighborhoods in Quispamsis, and some misfortune that happened there, mostly on a property damage basis, not resulting in any fire there. And that has been the consistent approach that the fire service has taken to this, is that generally speaking, and supported by data, consumer fireworks, when they're used and stored properly, do not represent a significant public safety hazard. I appreciate that this is at times a highly politicized issue, and many of the concerns that came forward, particularly to Councillor Luck, may raise legitimate concerns for council, but not necessarily that fall within the scope of the fire department to deal with.
Thank you very much, Chief, and certainly appreciate all of the data that you sent to the town so that we would have the research that you have provided us with that. So Councillor Luck, item number 2, correspondence from Councillor Luck and residents re consumer fireworks.
Your Worship, could I ask a question before we move on?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor Schreier.
To the Chief, please. Thank you, Chief, for being with us this evening. It's certainly appreciated. One of the areas that I was concerned about is, from my understanding, that it's not a firework bylaw per se. It covers under two different bylaws. One of the areas that I worry about is wind. And so could you tell me exactly how that would be covered within the bylaw? Is that under the fire ban, or where would, because that, I think wind conditions mean a lot. And it even if it's not real windy, sometimes the smell of a bonfire can come into your house. So you wonder, where's that fire coming from? So I was just wondering about where the wind issue would fall within our bylaws.
Chief Ireland, would you like to respond, please?
Certainly. I don't think that the bylaw itself speaks to the issue of wind specifically. I think the correlation that you could find is wind is sometimes a contributing factor to the province initiating a fire ban. And there is a provision in the fire prevention and protection bylaw that would extend to the discharge of consumer fireworks during a time when there's a fire ban. So that's the only direct correlation that I can make between wind and the use of consumer fireworks. The thing I would add, Deputy Mayor Schreier, is that part of the bylaw speaks to people discharging consumer fireworks in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. And it is my understanding that included in those instructions would be a caution against discharging fireworks during windy conditions. So it's not a direct connection there, but that's how I would foresee that working.
Thank you,
Chief.
Chief.
So that is something that perhaps we could look at emphasizing a bit more within our bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chief Ireland?
Councillor Luck has her hand up, Your Worship.
Yeah, she's going to speak in just 1 second there. I'm just looking to see if anyone has. Okay, Councillor Luck, your item is number 2.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So I was the one that put this topic on the agenda, and the impetus for me bringing this issue to council was really due to the incident that Chief Ireland had alluded to that happened over the Christmas holidays, where fireworks damaged an adjacent neighbor's home. But since that time, I've also heard from many Quispamsis residents, both for and against fireworks. The primary concerns include noise and safety. So again, not just fire. So I've heard stories about veterans with PTSD thinking that they're being shot at, children with autism that are responding in terror, dogs that have gone missing, sleeping children being woken up, and even not in our neighborhood, but a horse in Nova Scotia over the holidays. I believe it was the holidays or just before the holidays, having to be put down due to breaking its leg because it was startled and took off because of fireworks. Also, over my very short tenure on council, I've also observed many vibrant discussions about fireworks in our town on social media. So I'm surprised it's taken this long to get on our agenda because, again, it is a very hot topic. And I appreciate the fire chief's letter acknowledging that this topic was debated in length in 2014. So that was 8 years ago, and that fireworks fireworks are not a statistically significant cause of fires, only about 1.4%, I believe he said. However, he also acknowledged that there are considerations related to this issue which extend beyond fire services, as I mentioned earlier. Our current noise bylaw allows detonation of fireworks on any day of the week until 11 p.m. And I realize that some may think public education is all that we need, but from what I've seen and I've heard, this is a hot topic among our constituents. And what this tells me is that our current bylaw or bylaws, I guess it's dealt with in 2 different ones, is not working as intended. And what I'd like to propose is that we look for a better way forward. I'm not proposing an outright ban, as this is not what all the residents want. What I'm asking for is us to explore best practices in other communities, perhaps similar in size, to see if we can find a happy medium to address this issue. For example, have we ever considered allocating certain days for fireworks so residents would know when to expect them, or requiring a permit even for the, I think I can't remember what we're calling them. They're not display fireworks, they're just community use fireworks. So having perhaps a permit so the town could post where and when they'd be detonated. Again, I don't have all the answers. I would like to think maybe other communities have already had these discussions, and perhaps if we commit to exploring ideas and solutions on how we can adjust our bylaw, it would work for everybody. So again, that's my plea. I know not everyone wants them, and we've heard from lots of people very passionate about this topic. It does have an impact on our community, and I think public education is absolutely one of the many solutions. But what I'm hearing from so many people being passionate about this topic is that our current bylaws aren't quite doing what we want them to do. So again, I would really like to request that, our town staff, look for some best practices out there that we can learn from, and perhaps find that middle ground that would, I guess, meet the needs of our community to a certain extent, where we can kind of find a happy middle ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Miller, I see your hand. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to agree with Councillor Luck. I mean, since COVID, and maybe it's a COVID thing, they seem to be going off more frequently. And I understand New Year's Day and things like that, and Canada Day, but it could be Monday night, Tuesday night, every night of the week. I have dogs too, so I know what it does to them. But it's also, I'll use New Year's Eve. They started going off probably at 6 o'clock. And then after 1 in the morning, I said, okay, it's good. I'll take the dogs out. They were still going off at 20 after 1. So I think we do need to, I don't know if we're going to get an outright ban, because there is a lot of people that are still for them, but I think we need to look at changing some of or modifying perhaps some of our bylaws and putting some teeth into it as well. What is the fine going to be? Who do you call? What's the fine going to be if you start shooting them off at 2 in the morning? It seems that it's become more frequent, and yes, it's always on social media, which I fully understand. But I would agree that maybe we got to look at tweaking some of this a bit differently, because I don't care what's going on. At Monday on a work night shouldn't be going off at 11 o'clock at night. I don't care if that's what the bylaw is, and it's somebody's birthday or whatever. It's getting a bit out of control. I mean, if you would sit up by my house, and maybe it's because I'm higher up where I live, I mean, I can hear them all around me, sometimes any day. So I would concur with Councillor Locke that we need to modify this somehow. What's the best practice? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Any other hands up? Deputy Mayor Schreier, and then Councillor Donovan. Anybody else? Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, I'm 8 years goes by quickly, and our community has changed, and we'll probably see that in our demographics coming out in the near future as to our population increases. And one of the things that, as a counselor, and that I want to make sure that the best interest of the community is always heard. And how do we achieve that everybody is feeling really good about what's happening in our community? So I want to thank everybody that submitted emails on their opinions and their solutions, as well as the chiefs. So I would be very in favor of looking at best practices, seeing how we can move forward to make this a more cohesive topic. I know we can't always solve every problem, as it was stated earlier, or every challenge, but we have to look at our whole community. So I think a review and best practices is something that I would like to support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And Councillor Donovan, I think your hand was up, was it? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would have to agree with most of the comments that were made so far. I'm certainly personally, from a personal point of view, I'm not in favor of a full outright ban. It's not something I'm looking for, and I don't think it's something that would be good for our community. But as everybody else has said, I feel like the certain bylaws that we have right now the cover fireworks, I feel like they may be a little bit too open-ended and broad. So maybe if we, looked into best practices and gave it a review, and even if we just came up with something like, you can shoot off fireworks from, Friday to Sunday or something like that, because I mean, I feel like that's typically when most people would be wanting to shoot them off anyways, during the weekends. I certainly I'm not going out to shoot off fireworks on Wednesday at 2 in the morning, and I don't think anybody else needs to either. So I feel like there's ways that we can work together as a council, with people in our community who are both for and against, to find a middle ground that'll please everybody. I know you're not going to be able to please everybody, but I don't want an outright ban, and I don't think most people do. So hopefully we can discuss ways to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. And we're just waiting to go back to the main screen to see if there are any other comments. Councillor Olson.
Oh, you're muted, Emil.
Yeah, thank you. Just need a bigger icon there so I can see what I'm doing. But seriously, I think that 8 years has passed, and I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel here, but we've got different resources that we can refer to see how they do it in other communities. I would like to move that we refer this to staff to investigate, possibly through UMNB, Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick, to find out what others do in their communities, and possibly even through FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, to see what's supported in other communities across Canada. It's not an easy topic to deal with, and you don't like to take all the fun away from the kids. That's what they think it is, but it does have some negative results too. So I'd just like to move that we refer to staff to investigate and update our bylaws, bring back proposals to council.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier, sorry. On the question, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's more in the question. I just want to note that for those not aware, Chief Ireland is leaving us at the end of this month. So I just wanted to thank him for his service to the town and the community, and wish him all the best in his new adventures. And thank you very much, Chief, for everything you've done. You've been a great asset to our communities, and greatly appreciate it, and all the best to you. So take care.
Thank you, Councillor Miller, and certainly I second that, and certainly enjoyed my time on the Fire Board, Chief, and wish you all the very best from all of the residents of Quispamsis. So thank you very much for everything that you did for our community and for the community of Rossay.
Your Worship, on the question, could I have the motion read, please?
Yes, Ms. Snow, the motion regarding UMNB and FCM.
Moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. Refer to staff to investigate through UMNB and FCM what other communities do regarding the regulation of fireworks and bring back recommendations to council.
Mr. Loge.
Your Worship, I'm going to make the assumption that it includes the enforcement part of investigation as well, because if you look at our existing noise bylaw, they're actually prohibited from dusk till 11 p.m. any day, and they're prohibited during a fire ban, and they have to have fire extinguishers, and there are a bunch of regulations in our existing bylaw that pertain to fireworks. So we're going to have to get a little more specific to help staff in what you want to see on top of this, because the way it's set now, the noise bylaw can be enforced by the town, by the police department, or by the fire department. And the act of setting off a firework, there are a lot of conditions that we have in place now, Your Worship. Technically, under our bylaw, at this moment, you're not allowed to set off a firework at midnight on New Year's Eve. You know, it has to be done at 11 o'clock. So I can imagine the last thing that the police department and the fire department wants to be doing is get a report at 2 o'clock in the morning, try to find a fireworks, and nobody knows where it came from, and nobody's going to report it out. So I think the enforcement part of it is going to be the greatest part of the research that we're going to have to undertake as part of this. You know, I understand all of the parameters that some of the council members have brought up with regards to the social impact of this, and I think that's going to be the lens with which we do the research for council. I just want to make sure that we're going in the right path for our research when we get back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Logier. So narrowing that down to time, days, hours, and so forth, certainly very important. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm interested in an all-encompassing bylaw that other municipalities work to. And that's enforcement, that's times, it's whatever you want to include in a bylaw that refers to fireworks. So I don't think that's too complicated. I know I understand what we have now, but I'm just saying, how do other municipalities deal with theirs?
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks to the department head of the Works and Engineering. You bring up some really good points, and I think to Councillor Olson's point, kind of looking at best practices, but I'm glad you brought up enforcement, because I think enforcement is probably, the biggest part of the whole issue. And I think on top of that as well, so again, if we're giving some guidance on what we want to hear back, I'd also like to hear some best practices on what Chief Ireland had. I guess I'm not sure if he said it, I'm not sure where I read it, but I'll give him credit, is some public education, because I think that that's a big part. It's not everything, because again, there's lots of other things to consider, but I think, moving forward, it's the bylaw, it's the enforcement, but then also how do you package it all up to ensure that the residents kind of understand those things as well. Because I'm sure if we survey probably, I'm guessing 99.9% of our community that are using fireworks probably aren't even aware of some of the safety things that they should have on hand right now, which is kind of scary, but again, it is what it is. So anyway, I would like to see us kind of, even when we're looking into best practices, is what are people doing around even public education to go hand in hand with the enforcement and the bylaw itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. On the question, we have a motion on the table. Councillor Bigger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I certainly agree with what Councillor Olson's saying. Maybe I'd never even thought of that, but certainly, I have certainly seen in researching this, there are some other communities, there have been links that have been provided by opponents of fireworks in our community. And I've read with interest some of what other communities are doing. Now, that's not so much dealing with maybe consumer fireworks, more in terms of large municipal fireworks displays at holidays and things like that. But I like the idea of looking to see, are there other, sort of taking into account everything that Director Lozier said, because that's very important. I was thinking, as Councillor Miller was speaking, of anybody shooting off fireworks when he was walking his dogs at 20 after 1. Well, they're in contravention of the bylaw. So, if you create a bylaw and people don't abide by it, that's got nothing to do with whether the bylaw has the proper teeth, in my estimation. That's just somebody who's flouting the bylaw. And that's not the fault of fireworks. That's somebody who's choosing to not follow the bylaw according to how it's written. And as far as safety and a campaign of public education or whatever that Councillor Luck mentions, sure. Certainly, somebody sets up consumer fireworks sitting on their lawn or something and in their yard, and it's windy and it blows over and they haven't properly set it up or whatever, and then it maybe shoots off laterally when it's not supposed to or whatever. But I don't know that we can really put ourselves in a position of liability for being the ones that are responsible to teach people how to properly use consumer fireworks when they're regulated by the federal and the provincial government. And I also think there's a lot of danger of propane tanks sitting on your deck. And I think that Harley Davidson motorcycles at 7 in the morning are very loud also. And I think there are people who don't like dogs barking in the neighborhood, but we don't tell people that they have to leave their dogs in their yard all the time for fear of scaring people. And I do worry a little bit about us. I'm not trying to say that I completely oppose this and we should just move off of it. It seems to me that the great consensus here, happily, is that we find something that will address the issue, perhaps update our bylaws, perhaps they're a little behind the times. Maybe COVID has added something to how, often people make use of them. I've never purchased. I'm not a fan of purchasing and firing off fireworks. It's not something I'm into. I don't really quite understand it. I've certainly heard them going off in my neighborhood many times and thought, seriously, again, but so it seems like, there's a great desire to find a balance. And so I certainly endorse that. And to that end, I would say that Councillor Olson's idea is a great idea to just see what best practices are out there. And I guess Councillor Luck had mentioned that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted, thank you, Councillor Bigger. I just wanted to clarify, I guess, my comment around public education. So thank you for bringing that to me. My intention really wasn't the education around the use of fireworks. To me, it was more around the education that we have a bylaw. So speaking to your other example of people might not even realize that they're not supposed to be setting them off after a certain time. So I think, to me, that's the kind of education. So people are aware that there's certain days, certain times, whatever process, is the best practice, so that they're aware that, because I think sometimes people, yes, might be doing it in spite of the bylaw. And I think some people don't even realize that we have a bylaw and they're not breaking any bylaw. So I think just having some type of public education so they know when they can do it, I think would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Thank you on the question. So we have a motion, and I have done a fair amount of research, and there are many towns and cities across Canada that do have bylaws. I'm not sure, to Mr. Logier's point, how they enforce those, but that will be yet to be seen. So on the question, please vote now.
Your Worship, can I just confirm that this is replacing the motion that was on the agenda, or is that correct? Maybe to the town clerk?
I believe this is a new motion. I don't believe there was a motion at this point, and this has been carried 7-0. Thank you. Item 9B, Winter Trail Maintenance, Councillor Carrie Luck, and letters from residents. Staff report from Director of Community Services. Ms. Burton-Dixon, would you like to speak to this?
Certainly, Your Worship. Thank you. Staff started building trails several years ago. We anticipated that moving to a winter maintenance request from our residents as they enjoy our trails. Certainly COVID has moved that forward, and we're certainly glad to see that. As you know, our trail numbers have skyrocketed during COVID, and we've been collecting trail data in anticipation of requests for winter maintenance and, of course, for support of our trails. And our trail data is indicating that our numbers that are from COVID are still higher than 2018 and 2019 numbers, which again is wonderful. So we anticipated this request was going to come. We are hopeful that that would occur during the strategic planning, master transportation plan, and recreation master plan that are all taking place this year. So we were hoping to move that forward as part of the 2023 budget process. So we've obviously just completed the 2022 budget, and the allocation for those resources, both human and equipment, have not been approved as part of that budget. So obviously that certainly makes that challenging to add that level of service to our existing complement this year. It's certainly something when we have a request for an item like this, there's a lot of things to consider, and that's outlined in my memo. We have to consider again, both our human resources, our equipment resources. Is this the best interest of the entire community? Would they want their taxpayers' dollars to pay for this service? Do they want this service? So what we've seen again on some of the social media posts that have been occurring on this topic, there are both people for and against this this type of maintenance. So what we were hoping for is a wholesome discussion with residents throughout those three, strategic planning, master transportation planning, recreation master planning processes, and then we would have that information, and we'd be able to come to council with that in hand to make a recommendation and the resources to go along with that as part of the 2023 budget process. I would also add that if we were going to be considering a trail segment, which I think is again a wonderful idea to designate a certain section of trail that would be for winter walking and running and such. We have 10 kilometers of trail that we maintain via grooming right now, which would be for snowshoeing and cross-country skiing and walking, etc. But it was our intent to designate that as the QR trail where it's paved, where the Trans-Canada Trail has a number of 12 bridges. It has stairs. It's not doesn't have the right surfacing. Not to say that couldn't be do that, but we would designate the QR trail for that level of service if that were the case. But again, just looking to further continue down the path of the community consultation through those three planning processes and engage more of the community to make a fulsome recommendation to council as part of the 2023 budget process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burton-Dixon. And I don't know if anyone wanted to speak to that. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm struggling a little bit because I totally understand that things take time, things need to be budgeted. You know, I get that 100%, but I'm slightly impatient, and at least that's what I've always been told. And so I guess part of me wonders, you know, now where COVID is such a big thing and people are trying to get out, you know, they can't currently. I don't expect this, you know, to happen tomorrow, but you know, currently the Qplex is closed. You know, I'm wondering how many more of these lockdowns we're actually going to be going through, how many more variants we're going to have. You know, I don't have those answers, and I know that nobody else does, but you know, I think you're going to see a lot more people trying to get outside, and you know, I like the idea of having certain trails like the Qplex remain, you know, the ones at the Qplex remain natural. You know, they're not being plowed or anything like that, so people can, you know, snowshoe through them or whatnot. But like for the QR trail, for example, you know, it's on the main road, it's on the Pettingill Road, and I could be mistaken, but I don't think I am. I'm sure we have the sidewalk snow blower machines that go up and down the Pettingill Road to plow off the sidewalks. So I'm kind of curious as to, you know, what the big issue would be to have them veer off as they are going up the Pettingill Road and just do, you know, the QR trail. Maybe I'm being a little irrational, but I don't think that's a big issue. I guess I would just like to see, you know, even if we don't make a decision tonight, I'd like to see very, you know, at some point soon, you know, just a quick little rundown of what that might cost to have that machine go straight from the sidewalks of the Pettingill Road onto the QR trail. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you to the Director of Community Services and Recreation for the report. I really appreciate your input. I did note in your report that you hadn't received a lot of emails from residents on the topic. Fortunately or unfortunately, that wasn't my experience. I do love hearing from residents, but I did hear from a lot of them. And a lot of them do want to see the trails plowed. And I think it's just top of mind because, of course, we feel like, you know, lately we've been covered in snow. And I actually heard from residents before it hit social media. So even though social media definitely ramped it up, there were people that were reaching out about this topic prior to that. And again, I did attach some of those things to the agenda item tonight. And similar to what you had alluded to in your report is, you know, not everyone wants them plowed. And, you know, some people definitely want to see them plowed, but there are other people that want to use the trail system for other winter recreation things. And, you know, in fairness, the Trans-Canada Trail is a multi-use trail, and rightly so, the residents should, you know, use them for various winter recreation activities. As a community, I never see us having sidewalks in every residential area. Unfortunately, that's just going to be our reality. We're never going to see that. But in light of this, I do think as a town, we need to explore areas that we can maintain, you know, in the winter to support our community of all ages and to get them out in fresh air and to walk safely through the winter. And I realize that it might not be realistic to plow every trail, you know, because of just all the things that you mentioned, and even just the, you know, the bridges and the different landscapes, and, you know, but the QR trail, you know, that is already paved, and Councillor Donovan had mentioned this, you know, is maybe an option. And I'd like to see if we could get a cost breakdown of treating that trail perhaps like a sidewalk, to maintain over the winter months to ensure our residents can use it all year round. And just in the present day, I'm extremely concerned with the lockdowns and the gyms being closed and our Qplex track being closed, that our residents are very, very limited right now. And again, I know it's more of a time sensitive thing, but they're limited in terms of where they can safely walk in our community. So, you know, at this point in time, I would like for us to explore the costs of even maintaining the QR trail for all residents, even perhaps this winter, depending on the cost. I know it's being used, you know, people love our trails, which is kudos to you and your team. It's just a wonderful asset we have in our community. And you also in your report bring up some really good points that we need to consider. And one thing I would like to have as a council member is I'd like to see some of that data. I know you mentioned that we need to look at costs, we need to look at resources. I'd like to know how much are we talking? Like, you know, again, I know we're asking for it. I know residents are asking for us to perhaps take the sidewalk plower and plow the QR trail. Again, I think it's a happy medium. But, you know, again, what are we looking at for costs? And, you know, do we have, you know, reasonable resources that if we added a section of the QR trail, you know, would that completely break the bank for this year? And my last question is, you mentioned that we already are grooming 10 kilometers of trail for activities such as walking. And I'm not sure where that information, I guess I'm not aware of it. So I'm wondering if you could let me know what part of the trail system we're already doing that, because then at least when people reach out to us, we can direct them to at least that section of trail. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Okay. Yes, Director of Community Services, Ms. Burton-Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a price from a contractor to plow the QR trail. It's going to be between $7,000 to $8,000 for this year, and that would be for a 2-kilometer stretch. So it would end just below Selkirk, where there's a bridge. So that would be an estimate of plowing and sanding. We would still need to do our due diligence, of course, from an inspection and maintenance perspective. So that is the anticipated cost based on an estimate again of 15 storms. Again, we don't have the resources internally. The Director of Engineering and Works can speak to the sidewalk machines and his staff, but whether that availability is there, I'm sure their priorities are on the sidewalks, but I'll let him speak to that if there's capacity there. But if there is not, then we have an estimate of again $7,000 to $8,000 for that 2 kilometers of trail. And we do have the 10 kilometers. Obviously, I can send you information on the 10 kilometers where it's groomed, but we groomed the QR trail, we groom the trails around the Qplex, like Trans-Canada trails and all around the Qplex. And Some people prefer to walk on those trails. It packs it down, so it's they wear their crampons and they walk on that. They snowshoe, what have you. So specifically a map of the trails. That's generally the areas that we do in and around the Qplex, the Trans Canada Trail, and QR Trail. So we do have a cost estimate for, as I mentioned, for this year, if that's the interest of council. We have a potential if, again, looking at 2023, we have allocated money in the capital budget, $24,000 to put a trail connection piece, an active transportation piece up in Queensbury. We could reallocate that funding to go to Montana, where it's a future street, and we estimate that cost for 75 meters to be about $18,000. And what that would do for 2023 is to give us a loop that would make a safe passage, so avoid that steep hill on Selkirk and connect to Montana. So that's something else that we could do this fall as well in preparation for 2023. But again, those are the estimates that we have for that work at this time.
Thank you, Director of Community Services, Ms. Burton-Dixon. And also just a reminder that we did set the 2022 budget in the fall. As we move forward, that is our guiding principle as we do move forward, and I have to speak to that quite often to residents when they call me about our budget. So looking now and knowing that this is a hot item and one that is of great interest, and knowing that we are also working on a strategic plan, I think we're going to have lots of discussions going into budget deliberations for 2023. So I'm happy that this has come up at this point in time, but I know that we will get good guidance in moving forward from our directors, both of community services and engineering. So thank you for that. I don't know. Deputy Mayor Scryer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we were both thinking along the same vein right there when with your comments. I just, I want to be flexible because it is we are in a lockdown and we want to be able to be nimble so that we can give residents a little bit more than what they would normally have in these circumstances. And as the Director of Community Services has indicated, our numbers are way up. We want to encourage that. And then on the same time being diligent with our budget. And, can we just all of a sudden say, okay, $7,000 for 2 kilometers of trail? And so I'm assuming, I'm not even quite sure if that 2 kilometers starts at the Pettingale or if that's at the top by the Francophone School and comes all the way down. I think that might be exceeding 2 kilometers. So, but I just want us, I think it's important that we know what it would cost in order to do that. If the exercise wasn't too strenuous and that we could get a quick turnaround to sort of get an answer to that. But if it's going to cost a lot of money, I just don't see a strain from our budget. We need to be diligent in where we're going with our budget right now. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And, I certainly, respect that we have a budget, but and maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe we have a reserve for a reason. And, I'm not suggesting that we go through that reserve to take money out to do this. I'm just saying that there are possibilities for us to take on new projects or new things that, come up unexpectedly. So it's not like we have zero money. And the second part of my response was, just to try to figure out maybe if, with COVID going on right now, I know there's a lot of grants, and even without COVID, there's, a lot of grants going around. So I'm just wondering, through you to the Director of, Community Services, if there, might be some type of grant out there to, get people out moving, during COVID, because if I do remember correctly, I do remember hearing, something about certain types of grants that were being offered, to help out municipalities during the coronavirus. So I'm not sure maybe if I heard that wrong or not, but I'll just end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on. Councillor Luck, we've already heard, I think, from everyone twice, and I think that I'm going to limit it to that. We still have items on the agenda. If there is a motion to be made here.
I think Councillor Miller has his hand up.
Councillor Miller, you haven't spoken yet on this item?
Yeah, no, I haven't. So thank you, Your Worship. So I would just concur with what everybody else has said there. If all of a sudden we can, during the lockdown, that we can get one of the sidewalk plows down there if we could, and it works out, then great. But I think this is something we definitely look at for 2023. And I'm conscious of the budget as well. But if we're talking about 1 or 2 plows and it's going to cost us $1,000, or maybe we can't, Director of Engineering, you can say we can't get through there right now, but it wouldn't be the top priority, but just to give it a swipe just to see. Right now we've got some ice underneath, so it's going to be very interesting as it is in the next little while. So, but I'm definitely moving forward for 2023, but looking at internal versus external resources as well to see what can or can't be done. But anyways, that's just my comment. But I'm good if we can get it done this year, and if we got to wait till next year, that's great. But it sounds like more and more people are using it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. There is a motion to be read. No one's going to move that motion. So,
Worship, I don't-
Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm assuming you're referring to the motion from the Director of Community Services.
That's correct, Councillor Thompson.
With that, then, I would move that Council consider the request for winter trail building, plowing, and sanding in the 2023 budget process if it is identified as a request level of service through the Recreation Master Plan, Master Transportation Plan, or Strategic Plan.
It's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by, do we have a seconder? Councillor Miller. So it's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Miller on the question. Please vote now. Motion carried, 6-1. The nay vote, Ms. Snow, if you could identify.
Councillor Luck,
Thank you.
Your Worship,
Yes.
are we allowed to put a second motion forward on this one item or on this item, or can we only do one motion?
This
I would like that too.
Excuse me. This motion has been carried. It has been moved. So I'm going to go to Ms. Snow to ask her if a new motion is allowed to come to the table that has already been approved. Ms. Snow?
well, I guess it can't, as long as it doesn't conflict with the motion that is on the table or that has been passed.
Yes, Your Worship. My motion was going to be that we direct staff to investigate the possibility of some plowing of trails for this year, the spring or the winter of 2022, and report back if that's possible.
Ms. Snow, would you see that as a conflict? I see Director of Community Services, Director Burton Dixon's hand is up. Ms. Snow, first of all, is there a conflict there, please, on Robert's rules?
I'm just going to take a minute to read the motion that was passed a little more closely. Well, you could add it, I guess, as an addendum that the motion was to refer for the 2023 budget. You could also, as part of that, direct staff to look to see what could be done for the 2022 winter season. I think that would be appropriate.
Yes, Your Worship, that's what I thought we could do, because the motion only referred to the 2023. I wasn't quick enough on my button to get an addition in there before the vote was called. So if we could add for staff to investigate the possibility of plowing some of the trails for 2022 and report back.
So that has been moved by Deputy Mayor Schreier, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't know. I guess I would refer to the town clerk. But the motion that I made was passed. So is this a separate motion? And if it's not a separate motion and it's added on to this motion, then it should be approved by the person that made the motion and seconder, is the way I understand that to go.
You would be correct on that. Any changes to a motion have to be approved by the mover.
And the seconder.
And the seconder, that's correct.
Thank you, Your Worship.
So I will refer to Ms. Snow on that, and I know that the Director of Community Services wanted to say something as well.
I have this recorded as a separate motion. The other motion is already passed. And it's up to council if they wish to adopt it or not.
Thank you, Ms. Snow. And Ms. Burton-Dixon, did you have a comment?
Yes, Your Worship. As I mentioned earlier, I have a price. It's $7,000 to $8,000. That's what it costs. We have a quote from a contractor to plow 2 kilometers of trail this year. That is our estimate based on the 15 snowstorms to plow and sand. So that you have that information. I'm not sure if you're looking for information from the Director of Engineering and Works from the snow clearing perspective with regard to his department, but I have that information for you and I presented that earlier this evening. So I just wanted to share that. But I would also like to reiterate that it's not something you do once, and once you do it, you are committed to do it every day, and that's 7 days a week. You're going to plow that. When there's a storm, you're going to sand it, and you have to also inspect it and keep your paperwork in a line. So if, for example, somebody slips and falls, you have to be able to demonstrate through your log books, like we do for other recreation facilities, that we have done our maintenance and inspections on that stretch. So that information, I will pass that along to you again for your consideration in determining, again, that level of service. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. On the question, and I have to wait until the screen goes back to determine if you've already spoken once on this subject. I do not see anyone's hand up. Please, sorry?
I do on the question.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Schreier, you have moved this?
Yes, and I'm on the question.
On the question, go ahead.
I just, I want to make sure that we hear from the Director of Engineering if any concerns that he may have. I don't like doing this because it's a motion on the fly. I really hesitate to even put that motion forward because there is so many underlying issues that we may not have seen here tonight or had an opportunity to discuss fully. So that's why I was suggesting the report, that staff be able to report back to us instead of trying to hash it all out tonight on one sitting without giving the staff the opportunity for the due diligence to add any other issues that may rise from a motion such as this. So that was the intent of my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schreier. And Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank Deputy Mayor Schreier for adding that, because I feel like we, had this great discussion about different things, and then we kind of defaulted to kind of a preset motion that didn't really capture what we had been discussing. So I'm glad that this was actually brought up. In my mind, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought a few council meetings ago, we talked about, I think it was, the number was like $8,000 or $10,000 for poop bags for the trails. So to me, that number seems quite low in light of the environment and the resident, kind of requests to do even a small portion. And again, in light of the fact that we don't have sidewalks, this has been a very challenging winter so far as we've seen. And again, if we have some additional reserve that we could pull out of, I think it would make a big difference to our community. So again, but I do like the fact that, we're not making the decision on the fly. I'd like to make sure that staff kind of look at all the other pros and cons. I would like to have those details tonight, but just to make sure that, we haven't missed something. But I think it's a small price to pay to ensure that, especially during COVID times, and unfortunately it's not going away anytime soon, even after lockdown, we're still going to be trying to physically distance and stay away from people for the next few months at least. If there's kind of a safe spot that at least we can direct residents to a small area that they can safely get out and get some fresh air in our community. And I'm hoping that perhaps we can find some COVID funding to support that initiative. So it might be cost neutral, because it is definitely, a COVID initiative for sure this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 6-1. The person opposed,
Nay,
Councillor Bigger. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number C, rezoning application, Property Star Residential R1 to Highway Commercial HC, proposed two-phased mixed-use commercial development, 36 acres off Gondola Point Arterial. In attendance, Mr. Mark Hatfield, President of Property Star and Homestar. Welcome, Mr. Hatfield, and thank you for your patience. And you may go ahead and make your presentation, and you have about 10 minutes on our timer.
Thank you, Worship, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for fulfilling your agreement with the town and being your loyal council members. We'd like to put the presentation together here for the rezoning of this great parcel of land along the arterial, and in need that we have in the town of Quispamsis for a highway commercial. As a business person and developer, there's very small parcels of land in the town of Quispamsis that we can develop that are no bigger than 2 or 3 acres. I acquired this piece of property in the intent to look at developing this to bring more highway commercial to the town for the greater good of the community, to attract more people, to attract more businesses, and create more employments. And looking at this this facility and this parcel of land, we look at the Monarch subdivision, and we have over 200 homes that currently only have one access. This proposed development would give a second access to the subdivision in case there was any type of emergency, water over the road, or any access was denied. There would be a second entrance into the Finney Lane, and then learning more about the town's issues with the congestion on Hampton Highway. We've looked at the expansion of Monroe Lane down to meet the new entrance to this facility. Could be a possibility for the town to look at in their future transportation plan. We look at this as a great economic development for the town of Quispamsis and for future growth throughout. And looking at the development, we also took in consideration the master trail plan that everybody has spoken quite highly about tonight, and looked at dedicating areas to this facility to have quite a long section of trail. There's an excellent buffer to along all the people on Monarch for green space and for access for trails throughout the Colton Brook area. We bring this tonight to open to any questions and start the process of the rezoning. We've had many studies done, from traffic studies to the water and sewer connection studies, and we look to take part in partnership with the town on this to bring the water to this area for the development and for future growth with the town.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hatfield. And we will turn now to council to see if they have any questions on your proposal. We're just going to go to the other screen, so it takes us a few seconds just to adjust. And I see Councillor Luck has her hand up. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for our town. Again, lots of possibilities, and again, really nice. And you've addressed a lot of my concerns just in the short presentation you gave. The one thing, and I'm not sure if it would be you or perhaps our Director of Engineering and Works. No surprise, I guess my two concerns. I mean, right now that highway is the bone of my it's causes me quite a lot of headaches. I read in the proposal there's like a phase 1, a phase 2, and the traffic right now, the traffic analysis really focused on the phase 1. My concern is once you have the full meal deal there and you have a restaurant and you have hundreds of people, it sounds like there'd be hundreds of people extra because of the working location as well in there. I just worry about us not planning ahead for the congestion on the highway. I know it will be fine turning right out of that if you're heading kind of towards the Hampton Road, but I could see it really creating a huge amount of congestion if we're not planning ahead for either turning left, only because I remember seeing the same thing happen on Squire Drive. And I'm just wondering if we're planning in conjunction with this as a town to either put lights there or a traffic circle or something down the road. I think this is a fabulous, development. And then also, I guess it's more of a comment where we're starting to see even more development on that side of the road. I'll just make the comment that we still don't have safe access to that side. And then also keeping in mind kind of safe movement of people to get there, where currently we don't actually have that unless they're in a vehicle. So there's just a few things that I guess I want reassurances that we're looking at, and we will, consider those things moving forward. And I know it's going to be 2 phases, but once we get to the second phase, and I wouldn't want us to experience all those issues and then have to deal with them after the fact. I think they need to be planned in conjunction. So I'm not sure if Mr. Hatfield can address those or perhaps if Mr. Logier can address those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck.
I can address those, Your Worship.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Great questions, Councillor Luck. And yes, so in the Englobe report, the traffic study done by the engineers, phase 1, they feel that with the volume of traffic, no set of lights or anything is needed. However, with phase 2, most definitely the increased traffic with proposal that we have would warrant a new traffic signal section there. And with, if you look on, if Mrs. Snow, I think if you're in charge, you can go to page 119 of the agenda. We can look at a section where it says future streets. What we're collaborating right now, and with the master plan on page 45, they talk about the Mr. Monroe Lane, is potentially connecting that for KVHS and having a four-way intersection with our future street on the arterial. This would A, give us access to Finney Lane, B, give us a second access at KV. So we're looking at maybe working some type of partnership with the town and with the provincial government to make this happen, which has been spoken to in the traffic study done by Anglo, that they would recommend a set of lights there moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. I'll go back to council. Please wave your hand if you have a comment or a question. It's very hard to see the icons from this distance. Councillor Bigger, and then Councillor Miller, then Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Bigger.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Mr. Hatfield. I just wanted to quickly say that I appreciate you pointing out that situation about the traffic concern that Councillor Luck raised, because of course that's absolutely seminal to the traffic that we'd like to bring. You know, I just was thinking the other day, I was driving along, I was driving into the city, into St. John, and as I drove along sort of before the Ashburn Lake Road exit, I thought to myself, hey, whatever happened to that big development, the villages that they talked about putting there? Remember that? There was a talk 2 or 3 or 4 years ago about how they wanted to have this roadside kind of shopping plaza that would have outlet stores and restaurants and various sundry sorts of things. And when I read your proposal, I thought that this sort of comes as close as we can get to something like that, that draws people down. I'm amazed that you've found an undeveloped parcel of land that you can responsibly develop that is that close to the highway that serves your needs, that, you know, can be managed safely and with ecological concerns all considered. And I'm just really impressed, I guess, with all of the work that you've done, the traffic study, or how you've been in touch with the province. And I'm very impressed with what seems to be a real commitment. I mean, I think you have a very strong tie to the town, a very strong commitment here as an employer. And so obviously, you know, the proof is in the pudding, as they say. And but I fully support this as presented to go to the next stage. And it is very exciting, as Councillor Luck pointed out. I think it could really represent some great opportunity for the town. So thanks very much for bringing it forward. It's a great report and proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. And I think Councillor Miller, you were next.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Hatfield, for your presentation. Well done. My question is kind of through you, Your Worship, to probably Director of Engineering, because right now on that road, having a second access, I think, is also a great idea. Right now, Monarch is quite busy and it's getting busier and busier. I don't know if the province, and this is where I'm going to ask the Director of Engineering, would let Monroe Drive be extended to add on, or do we even look at potentially, there's that on Swanton, we've got approval for a development that hasn't started yet for a while that's supposed to have a couple of apartment buildings, mixed residential in there. Is that somehow that could get out to the highway as well? But also Monarch, when it comes out, maybe we'll have to, again, look at the whole thing. Is if they come out, instead of turning left, if they turn right, we actually have a roundabout there close to right where that, if this proposal goes through, where that would be. It's kind of fix a couple things all at once, because that keeps getting busier and busier and busier there. And if this development goes through, it will even get much more so. And then we've got a few right on the corner of right across from Daly's as well that's going to be developed here soon, or it appears to be. So I think we got to look long term at you know, traffic circles. Personal opinion, I think the one off Squires was amazing. I've heard nothing but positive comments back from the people there. And then we can, and anyways, it's just maybe Director of Engineering, I don't know if you could respond to how we could look at this, or if it gets to that level, and what do you think the appetite for the province would be to either extend Monroe Drive or add on to Swanton or something like that? Anyways.
Sure thing, through your
Thank you,
worship.
Councillor Miller.
And Mr. Hatfield, hit on one main point, is that the way that the studies are presented, the first phase, the way the analysis is set up, is that the movement can be accommodated with just turning movements as they exist. It's when we get into the subsequent phases that we got to look at what level of requirement that we want to place on the developer. And in that sense, the town and a future partner, if we look at this as strictly as a T intersection, that is, if we only look at it as all the traffic being generated is going to come out of this development, then ultimately, and I'm not trying to presuppose a negotiation here, but it would be the responsibility would be fully on the developers because they're creating that load. There would not be as much cost to the town to develop an intersection. But the more we look at the possibilities, the more we expand the accesses on that location, then the costs to the town will go up substantially. If we remember the cost of the roundabout at Squire Drive, it was $1 million. Fortunately, we had the province cost sharing 70% of that with us, and we found it important enough for the population to cost the rest of it. The province, generally speaking, is looking at allowing access onto the controlled access onto that Route 119, as long as it's linked to a municipal street. And that way that they can ensure that the traffic control is done appropriately. So I would imagine that the second, any development that is being proposed here is actually the creation of a new street into that complex. And at that intersection, that's when the province is looking for some type of an agreement that the municipality is going to be able to control traffic in that area. Now, if we link them into this and say, okay, we've got an ability to maybe loop Monarch Drive around the bottom of the school area, tie in Monroe Drive so that both Monarch and the school have a appropriately designed exit into this common intersection, they may partner with us. But again, we all know what dealing with the province is like the last few years, is there's no guarantee that they've got funding of any sort, and they were very hard to commit to that. So the potential is there. What type of funding would be, it's anybody's guess. The traffic in that particular area, if we're looking at a set of lights as opposed to a roundabout, obviously, if you recall the last project that we did, there's a substantial difference. It's double the cost to go to a roundabout or more, depending on what type of construction work is required in this particular area and what land is available as well. So those all come into play when you're looking at alternate styles of the intersection. So I think what we're doing at this stage is we're getting potentially a little bit beyond the pros and the cons from an actual presentation to council. This would be items that would be discussed, I guess, during that public presentation section, with the ability to have those types of questions raised at a general forum that can be followed up. It's good to know those types of ideas at this stage so that staff can be prepared to do a little bit more investigation. But they are all very valid questions to have in front of us as we consider this particular application. To everything from drainage. We've seen the stormwater management in that particular area, the services, the water, sewer, all those things are coming into play, and our municipal planning officers have covered a lot of that in his correspondence to council as part of the background document. So I think as council members, you've got a pretty good handle on the things that you've got in mind, and it sounds like there's some desire to move this to the next step, which is at this stage of the game. Then what we're looking for this evening is if council is in favor of moving it to the next step of the hearing, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Director of Engineering, Mr. Loge. And I think there was someone else, Deputy Mayor Schreier, and then Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and a great presentation. Lots of information here to go through. A very meaty presentation and thorough. So I thank you, Mr. Hatfield, for that. makes it a lot easier to find the answers to our questions. The one question I did have though was I was wondering about it. It appears to be quite a distance between the new proposed road going in and the existing houses on Monarch. Because could you tell me exactly how big that berm is, or what a distance, what the distance is to the neighbors in the residential area will be, and how that extends down into Finney as well in phase 2?
Yeah, so to your worship, Deputy Mayor Schreier, we looked at that, and one of the biggest things with any residential neighborhood, everybody wants development, but nobody wants it in their backyard. So in looking at this unique piece of property, we wanted to take that into consideration. And right now, I do believe, and don't quote me on these numbers, but I do believe it's 15 meters or more of existing trees, natural trees that would be staying on the first 5 lots, which is basically, sorry, the first 4 lots, and the 5th lot being the town lot where the substation is for the pumping. After that, it really starts to thicken out. The 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th house on Monarch would never see anything or probably hear anything, because there's probably in the distance of 300 to 400 meters of natural tree space that would be staying there. We took that in consideration for the town, or for the residents themselves. They've lived there all their life. They get accustomed to having natural forest behind their home, and we wanted to be a friendly developer to make that happen. We also kept the buildings further away, and the backyards of these properties are just lay down areas where it may or may not be fully developed. So everything's fully away from the homes and the residents to work with them. I did actually knock on every door and spoke to over 80% of them about the development. And some of them offered for me to buy their homes out from them, but none of that has taken place yet. So we want to be a friendly developer, and that was one of the biggest considerations in that, is to develop that, or not develop that land close to their homes, leave it for green space, maybe potential walking trails for the town as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that information. And just a follow-up question, Your Worship, if I may, and it has to do with lighting. Have you taken that into consideration on the amount of lighting and how that may affect your neighbors?
100% we have. Any lighting that would be on the premise would all be downward facing lighting. That would help keep the lighting and doing any light pollution to any of the residents in the area around.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Schreier. Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. Going to look, Councillor Donovan. And then Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a general question for Mr. Hatfield. Obviously, you don't have the place built or developed or yet or anything like that, but I noticed in the blueprints, I guess you would call them, that there was 3 sections for like big box stores. And I don't know about anybody else, but big box stores kind of get me excited, because to me it means growth, and I mean it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it certainly excites me. So I guess what I'm just kind of curious about is, obviously you don't have any prospects for those yet, probably, but because there's 3 different items on there that say big box store. So there's like big box store 1, big box store 2, and big box store 3. When we're talking about a big box store, are we talking like Walmart size or like Giant Tiger? Hopefully that makes sense, because there's like quite a big like size difference between like those 2 brands, for example. So hopefully that makes sense.
So thank you. That's an excellent question. And if there's a couple different ways I'll answer this. And if we look at this total project itself, and we were to take the power center in St. John, where there is Walmart, Future Shop, that kind of whole PID, that's basically a 26-acre PID. This proposal here on phase 2 is 28 acres. So we're talking about some big development, some big potential for the town to come in. Lot number 21-3 is actually the Walmart in Sussex footprint. So the same area that that type of store would require is actually in lot 21-3. So there's great potential here for a big box store Councillor Donovan, that you suggested Giant Tiger, Walmart, maybe a Costco. So there's definitely potential for all these type of things to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Hatfield. Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great presentation, Mr. Hatfield. It's quite exciting, really, for our community. I've often wondered what was going to happen with that big piece of land there. I know at one time they were going to put a golf tournament in there, a golf club in there. Never materialized, but 40 acres is a big piece of property. So I'm very keen to see something happening there. I just wanted to say that that we've heard quite a bit of information here this evening from councillors and input in that. And our Director of Engineering mentioned the public presentation. And I'd just like to move that council makes a motion to set a public presentation date for February 15th, 2022 to present the proposed municipal plan bylaw and zoning bylaw amendments to the public as per section 25 of the Community Planning Act. So that will start it along its formal process.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. On the question, I don't see any. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Mr. Hatfield, once again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, councillors.
And it certainly looks like Quispamsis is ready to move forward once again with future development, and certainly we're looking forward to seeing what's going to transpire. So thank you for your time this evening to do this first presentation.
Great, thank you.
Item number D, reappointment of Mayor Libby O'Hara to Kennebecasis Regional Joint Board of Police Commissioners. Recommendation from Nominating Committee. Moved by Deputy Mayor Schreier, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Number 10, bylaws. Part A, December 21st, 21, proposed amendments to number 05-22, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting sewage utility. Deputy Mayor Schreier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Third and final reading be given to the sewage utility bylaw amendment number 005-22. A bylaw respecting the sewage utility hereby amended as follows. 1. By deleting definition U, utility inspector in section 2 and submitting the following. 1. U, utility inspector means the director of engineering and works on his or her designate. 2. By adding in a section 8H, which would read as follows. The town will accept the residential property tax credit statement for a multi-unit dwelling as a means of reducing the sewer billing to 1 unit by 1 dwelling unit. The statement shall be received by January 1st each year, or the billing will revert back to the designated number of dwelling units.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Schreier. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Schreier, and I'm sorry, I can't see any hands. Who is it? Councillor Donovan. It's been seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote. Motion carried 7-0. New business. Item 11. A, Gondola Point Road Wastewater Pump Station number 5. Part A, Design. Staff report from the Director of Engineering and Works, Mr. Logier.
Thank you, Your Worship. The memo for council is relatively straightforward. As you know, we've allocated money in our capital budget to do the changes and replacement and upgrades to the wastewater pump station number 5 on the Gondola Point Road. That is the pump station that's to the right of the the Quispamsis Road heading toward the ferry landing. So it's the last one on the line. It is the one that was identified by our consultants as having the most need for the replacement in our schedule. So as part of this process, we wanted to initiate design as soon as we could. And we've asked Englobe to continue with the project, and they're now at part A of the project, which is that initial design. We will be coming back to council with parts B and C, which would include final designs and tenders and things of that nature. But we do need to proceed, and we're looking for council's resolution this evening.
Thank you. There is a motion to be put forward. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just before that motion, am I able to ask a question or?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm not looking to cause any, trouble or anything. I'm just kind of a little bit confused about, it's talking about the request for proposal, and it's the total is, $188,000. So is it? I don't know if I'm not understanding, but I thought it was like $100,000 threshold that we didn't have to go for like a request for proposal, or like, can somebody explain that to me, maybe?
Your Worship, in the correspondence, I've identified the process that we do. The purchasing policy and our agreement with the Federal Provincial Act. There are exemptions from that process, and those exemptions have been met with regards to special projects, specialized consultants. So we are meeting the terms and conditions of our purchasing policy. We've used this same process in the past when we've identified projects that council has approved in the budget, and when we've worked on plans that have been previously developed with a consultant as part of an overall master plan, and we've just carried through with that same consultant. So this is consistent with what we've done in the past, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Logier. On the question, please vote now.
Your Worship, who seconded that motion?
Nobody.
We didn't have a seconder. I apologize. So Councillor Donovan, did you move that?
I didn't move
You
it,
were
but I
asking
can
the question.
like me to. I can move it if you want.
Seconder, please. Councillor Thompson. It's been moved by
Would you like
Councillor
me to-
Donovan, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Please vote now.
Was the motion read?
It wasn't read.
Motion could be read, yeah.
No, the motion is read, Your Worship.
Am I okay to read it?
Go ahead.
The town that I would move that the town direct Englobe Corp to commence Part A of the design phase Gondola Point Road WWPS number 5 project, since the project falls under current municipal authority for award of consultants. Staff will provide council with reports prior to seeking formal authorization to proceed to parts B and C of the project.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 11B, Memorial Dedication Program Policy, Staff Report from Director of Community Services, Ms. Parton-Dixon. Deputy Mayor? Deputy Mayor Scryer?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to put a motion forward that council accept the Director of Community Services recommendations to adopt the Memorial and Dedication Program policy.
It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 12, reports. Councillor Olson.
Yes, I'd like to move that we receive and file reports.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the
Councillor
question.
Olson, I think.
Pardon me?
Councillor Olson, I think, your worship.
It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, don't see any. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Business arising from Committee of the Whole, I don't see any. I am looking for an adjournment, please. Moved by Councillor Luck, seconded by Councillor Donovan. Have a nice night, everyone. Be careful driving. We'll see you at the next meeting, February the 2nd, I believe.
Can we just have a vote on that one? Just to finish.
We see some hands up.
Yeah.
Are we doing an electronic vote? Motion carried 7-0. Take care, everybody. I hope you find some joy this week in your life. Bye-bye.
Thank you.